All right, everybody, how we doing? How we doing? All right. What is going on, everybody? What is going on? Y'all doing okay? Yeah? We doing well? Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I think Loki is probably. I feel. What do we even call, like, literally? What he just did is he just did a Rygo. You know, like, there's not really. This is clearly at this point. I'm not saying he has the strongest fruit, because obviously, Emu's fruit exists. Luffy's fruit can do all sorts of crazy stuff. Blackbeard's fruit is a hard counter to other fruits. But in terms of just straight power, right? Just straight power, isn't this the strongest fruit? Like, just raw power? Like, if you were like, hey, I want a fruit that would just let me in, like, just let me fuck shit up on an unimaginable scale, you'd pick this fruit, right? It's balanced, I suppose, by the fact that you need to be an ancient giant to really tap its full power. One thing that also doesn't make sense is how come there's Haki coming out of the lightning attack, which is kind of crazy because that's not something that we normally see, right? Because if you go through this, like, so for example, Kaido's Boro Breath or Kaido's lightning attacks or Big Mom's, fire attacks or lightning attacks, they're not powered by Haki. They're just normal attacks. Why does Loki get, like, Haki lightning? What is this? Jude Milford, thanks for the 8. Is Emu the dumbest of all time? Didn't nuke Luffy in East Blue when the Nika fruit was found, and didn't know Nidhog was the only country that believed in it. Was in the only country that believed. Okay, so I think we got to cut Emu some slack here, because a little bit of slack, all right? One, I'll always say this. Oda does not prioritize logic when it comes to storytelling. That's his weakest area, maybe. That and killing characters and too many characters. But Oda does not prioritize logic. Lots of times characters just don't say or do things or share information or make simple conclusions because it would make the story too straightforward. Oh wait, I got a couple super. Oh no, yeah, this is the first super. Okay, so that's number one, right? So we can't really blame Emu. You could have Oda writing Vegapunk himself. You could write Emu writing. You could swap Emu for Vegapunk himself, and Oda would still write him the same way, which would be like Vegapunk would be like, "Egads, I should have known. Nidhogg would have been in Elbaf all along, of course." Like, but ultimately, even Vegapunk, the way Oda writes, he would not have Vegapunk come to that conclusion, It's just the way it is, all right? Now, as for the nuking Luffy in East Blue, I've got headcanon for all of this, all right? Headcanon for nuking Luffy in East Blue. I imagine there's been a million Gomu Gomu no Mi users throughout the story in the past, And, like, the fruit changes hands frequently, I imagine, right? It's been 1,000 years, and nobody has actually awakened it, right? So you can imagine there's been plenty of Gomu Gomu no Mi users already, and it's just I imagine no one's awakened it, right? So you might say that, well, shouldn't Emu still be worried about it? Like, trying to do something about it? But 1,000 years is such a crazy long amount of time. I think you can cut him some slack, Like, 1,000 years ago, like 400 years ago, like, the country I live in, America, didn't even exist, Like, 1,000 is so long. Like, it's essentially like going through the period of, fucking 21st century, Cold War, World War II, World War I, Great Depression, Roaring Twenties, all of that stuff. Get to slavery ending, Abraham Lincoln assassination, right? The founding fathers, the Revolutionary War, Tea Party shit, Christopher Columbus, all of that. Like, that's so much stuff, and that's not even close to 1,000 years. 1,000 years is just such a long time that if something if something hasn't been a problem for that amount of time, and life's been pretty good, you can understand someone slacking a little bit and being like, just another Goma Goma no Mi user. Who gives a shit? Like, I know that you might be like, no, Emu should really have been concerned about this, but I think just if everybody sat back and imagined their own lives, I feel like everybody's got something in their life that, well, this thing hasn't been a problem for the last 3 years, so I kind of just stopped thinking about it and worrying about it. That's a thing. That happens. Hell, there are people who have like, heart issues or something like that. They could die at any moment, but if you go like 10, 20 years without it being a problem, yeah, maybe you forget it a little bit. Maybe you stop being as careful about taking your medication at points. Stuff like that happens, right? So I don't blame Emu for the Goma Goma no Mi thing, because I'm just going to go ahead and assume that after like the 20-something Goma Goma no Mi user who came and went, Emu just stopped really keeping tabs on like, who's got it now, That's my headcanon for that. Now, Nidhogg, Nidhogg being an Elbaf, again, you could say obviously Nidhogg's an Elbaf because that's the country that believed in it, but I don't think that's as obvious as that, because it's like, you can look at the Goma Goma no Mi logic, right? The Goma Goma no Mi, it's not like the giants of Elbaf really believe in the sun god, but that doesn't mean that the Goma Goma no Mi was, like, the Nika fruit was in Elbaf this whole time. Like, fruits presumably move around all the time throughout the world. So, it's like, fruits move around all the time throughout the world. It's abnormal for a fruit to have stayed in one place for so long. And the only reason it had is because of something that... I might close this window in a second. The only reason that the Nidhogg fruit happened to stay in Elbaf for so long is because of a very unique situation that Emu could not have known about, which is that it was guarded all this time by Ragnar, right? Because if anything, I think Emu's conclusion that it's not in Elbaf is fine, because nobody had fucking eaten it in 1,000 years, right? No one had eaten the fruit from Elbaf, right? Like, what's the Emu's biggest fear with the Nidhogg fruit? It's that a giant or an ancient giant would eat the fruit and become a huge threat, right? But so many powerful, like, giant after giant, ancient giant after ancient giant, like so many powerful kings, throughout history, Jarl, Ors, whatever. Nobody had eaten it for so long, so why would Emu think that it's an Elbaf? Because logically speaking, if it was an Elbaf, why would a giant not have eaten it up to this point, right? If anything, it would be very easy for Emu to cross Elbaf off of the list of options for having the fruit, because it's like, okay, that would be, like, if it was there, it would have been eaten by now, right? Why would Emu think that it would not be eaten, right? Because we already know that the giant kings of the past, like Harold wanted to eat it in the past, right? Even before Harold got turned evil by Emu, Harold had already wanted to eat the fruit before, but Ragnar had stopped him. You can presume that the same thing has happened over and over, right? So if Emu observed that none of the giant kings since the Void Century have eaten the fruit, why would he think that they have it, It actually, I'm with Emu on that one. That one makes sense. Oh, whoops, let me change this. Hold on, continuing on. Okay, wait, we got a lot to get through. Sorry, I spent a long time on that answer. Uranium Santos, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for a month. I hope you're enjoying it so far. Loki should have just let that... Wait, what? Loki should have just let that shit fly, and the veins alone will discourage the opposition. The veins alone? What does that mean? I don't understand that fully. I don't know what that means. Let's get the stream likes up to 50 real quick. Let's get stream likes up to 50. Yeah, do you want to elaborate, Uranium Santos? If you just comment, I'll see it in chat. Talha, good to see you. Thanks for the 5. That's our Sanji, that's our Zoro, but no, that's our Usopp. Elbaf being unlikely to even be a top 3 Usopp arc was not on my bingo card. If this doesn't happen for Usopp over the course of this arc, I'm not joking, it's really not good. That's really, really not good. That is not the same as, like, Zoro not getting something in Wano. This is something that Usopp has been talking about for a long time. And Usopp is, at this point, the Straw Hat that is most overdue for something, story-wise. Like, it's been since Dressrosa. Everybody's gotten a little something. Usopp hasn't. I don't want to talk about that, though, because I do genuinely have confidence that Oda is going to do something for Usopp. Also, I don't support the that's our Sanji, that's our Zoro stuff, because straight up, like, it's participation trophies, practically. Like, Zoro and Sanji are basically doing, like, for all the focus on the wings of the king this arc, Zoro and Sanji, like, the whole show is being stolen by Loki. And I like Loki a lot, but it's just like, how am I supposed to give a shit about Zoro blocking some thorns when Loki's, like, out here dropping nuclear bombs and destroying all the MMAs in one go? Like, that's our Sanji. It's like, Sanji doesn't even get to fight Sommers, it doesn't look like. And if he does get to fight Sommers, if either Zoro or Sanji still get to fight Sommers, I'm not going to give a shit, because Oda's had, like, 4 characters fuck up Sommers in the span of less than 30 chapters. It is insane at this point. So, you know, like, you can be disappointed about Usopp, but I'm disappointed for Zoro and Sanji as well in this moment. I know this is a moment for Loki to shine, so I'm still hoping Zoro and Sanji get their shine, but it's just like, they did not do anything impressive this chapter. Even Sanji breaking Sommers' thorns, it was more so, it wasn't like Sanji did something special, it was just the fucking geniuses didn't think to use fire beforehand, you know? Loki gonna pull another law shit, LMAO? It's happening! It's happening! Why is it happening again? Does Oda just hate the characters that he wrote? Why is he doing this? It was actually, like, I'm not kidding. When Luffy said, like, whatever, that's our Zoro, like, that's Zoro, he's a member of my crew, don't forget him, I'm just like, this is borderline embarrassing for Zoro. Like, this is like baby food shit that he's doing right now, and he's getting a pat on the back from Luffy, while Luffy and Loki are doing everything, like the bulk of the work. Like, there was a time in the past where it was Luffy and Zoro side by side in Whiskey Peak taking out these bounty hunters, or traveling on the train to Enies Lobby, like taking out the Aqua Laguna and doing stuff like that. Hell, on the rooftop a little bit ago, Luffy and Zoro fucking up Kaido while the other supernovas were useless, right? Look at where we've come. Zoro doesn't even get to fight fucking Sommers in this chapter. He blocks basic horns that I feel like Kinemon could probably block. Like, it's like Luffy giving him like a good job, little buddy. Like, oh my god. It's actually crazy. It's like, does Zoro look up at Luffy and Loki and just think, man, once upon a time, like 150 chapters ago, that would have been me and Luffy, you know? Like, does he think like that? I don't know. Let's get Streamlux up to 50 real quick. King GG6681, thanks for the 2. Did you see the God of War that was in Little Garden? Wait for the next video. The video is not coming out Saturday. The chapter release was late, so everything got bumped a little bit. Chapter review will be out tomorrow morning, and the main video will be out Sunday. But watch for that in Sunday's video. This is close to theory confirmed. It wasn't quite theory confirmed, but it was close to theory confirmed. When we first met Loki and found out that he'd eaten a special fruit, I dropped a theory saying that Loki's fruit was the Elbaf god fruit. because Elbaf was the warrior god that we were told about in Little Garden. I want to give myself props for almost being right, but it was not quite right, because the reality was that Loki didn't eat the Elbaf warrior god fruit. Rather, Elbaf ate the fruit that Loki now ate, right? So it's one step removed from essentially being correct. It's pretty close, but no cigar, right? Ajay05, thanks for the 2. This shit ass, tension gone when the big 3 shows up, plus emu remedial. Remedial? Oh my god, why is my hair sticking out like this? What is emu remedial? What does that mean? Emu remedial. Emu remedial. What does that mean? What does that mean? One sec. Hold on, 1 second. Let me add one thing. Rinnegan, yeah, I do think the tension just disappeared, but what we might be heading towards is like a Dami Reversi situation soon, so hopefully, like... Also, one thing that's interesting is I feel like Emu's not going to be able to fight here on Elbaf the way that he did at God Valley, because people aren't really talking about this, but in God Valley, Emu's actual body seemed to have transported into Saturn, right? And it seemed like they were fighting his actual body. Here, it seems like his actual body is still in Marijoa, and he's just possessing Gunko from afar. So it seems pretty different, you know? I wonder if that comes down to the level of contract that you have, where, you know, if you've got a God's Knight level contract, Emu can possess you, but he's not actually entering your, like, he's not actually taking over your, like, his body is not transporting into your body, right? Whereas in God Valley, that was literally the case. Because the interesting note is in God Valley, like, Emu had to... It was low-key funny. Emu had to travel back by ship from God Valley. Because, like, once he transported over into Saturn's body, he was in Saturn's body. Like, that was him. That was, like, actually Emu. And he couldn't just teleport himself back to Marijoa from what it looked like. He actually had to get on a boat and, like, you know, he essentially had to take the bus back home, which is really fucking funny. So... the Emu that we're getting here, I think, is not going to be the same strength as the Emu that was at God Valley, because it's not his actual form. Like, it's not his actual body. So I don't know if even Emu can be an adequate opponent for Luffy and Loki here. I do wonder if it has to be a Dami Reversi situation. I don't know. Renegon Payne, thanks for the 5. How has what we've learned about Shanks this arc reshaped how you envision his reunion with Luffy? His reunion with Luffy is... it is... Because Shanks' role has really elevated over the course of this. Shanks' role has really elevated over the course of this this arc. Like, we always knew he was going to be important. Oda's told us he's going to be important. But now it's just like, the more that we've seen, the more that Shanks' significance has detached itself from Luffy. Like, he's obviously still personally very important for Luffy and Luffy's story. But Shanks has clearly got his own destiny in this whole situation, right? So... I don't know. I would love to see Shanks and Luffy's reunion be a happy one, obviously, but I would love for the whole Bartolomeo incident to actually play into their encounter with Luffy. Like, the thing that Shanks taught Luffy in the first place was, like, never let anyone mess with your friends. And Shanks just fucked up Luffy's subordinates who pledged themselves to him, and Luffy accepted them, you know? Let's get the streamlights up to 100 real quick. Let's get the streamlights up to 100. I do think that the tension gone... comment, it had to go because for a moment it had to go because that's the only way you can have like when you have a dramatic debut, right? It has to kind of feel like, oh, the situation was really bad, but then the heroes came in to save it, right? The heroes came in to save it. So like there has to be a moment of just like, holy shit, like the cavalry's here. And now they're fucking up the bad guys, because you can't have Loki show up and immediately be under duress, right? Because that's not... His initial debut has to feel like overwhelming power, right? Because that's what Oda wants to convey. So just by sheer nature of the setup, just by sheer nature of what this scene needs to be, it was always going to be a cutting of some tension to some degree. Like, that was always going to happen. That's the way it has to be, you know? Now, as long as that isn't how the rest of Elbaf rides out, I think I'm okay with that, you know? Because you need to have that moment of like, holy shit, Loki's so strong, he's turning the tides, you know? You can't have him show up and not turn the tides, because if he can't turn the tides, then that doesn't have the, you know, emotional effect that you want to bring with his with the impact of his introduction, you know, with his powers introduction. Obsidian Angel, thanks for the 5. Notice Mauricio looks fine. Time dilation upscale. I just don't believe in the time dilation thing. I don't believe in the time dilation thing because I think that other people have done the math. There's just too many things that don't add up for that time-wise. I saw some people discussing that this means that... let me look at Mauricio again. That this means that Imu was exaggerating. Or we're just not seeing the part of Mauricio that's actually, like, in trouble. You know? Like, we only see a little bit of it. So... yeah, I mean, that's the way that I would justify that. We're really just seeing the castle, you know? One Piece fan 74, thanks for the 5. Golden Spoon, thanks for the 5. The world government / Imu also did send someone to take out Luffy earlier, but they just happened to send Kuma. That's a weak argument because they didn't send someone to take out Luffy because of the Goma Goma no Mi. They sent somebody to take out Luffy just because he was, like, you know, he was a growing threat. Like, as they treated him like they would a normal pirate. Like, nothing about his bounty or how they discussed him ever seemed to suggest that they gave a shit about the Goma Goma no Mi aspect. But again, I would headcanon that as being like, perhaps there've been other Goma Goma no Mi users in the past 1,000 years that became as strong or stronger than Luffy that never actually awakened the fruit. Like, my argument would simply be that Imu's likely seen this so many times that the idea that the fruit could awaken just seems like absurd at this point, because it's been, like, again, 1,000 years is so long, you know? Like, that covers so much time. That's such a long period of time. That's literally like fucking, you go through the whole Renaissance and Middle Ages and all that shit during that period of time, you know? That's a crazy amount of time. You know? I mean, like, from our perspective, if something doesn't happen for like 50 years, that feels a long time, you know? But I would agree that, like, you know, from Thriller Bark onwards, I think that there was nothing new that the world government could really have been doing to try and take down Luffy that they weren't already kind of doing, right? Because, sure, Kuma didn't take care of him. And then the next arc, Kizaru was after him for separate reasons, but technically we saw that, you know, like, an admiral was after Luffy, and even still Luffy got away thanks to, you know, just things tend to work out for him, right? And then, like, Luffy himself put himself in Impel Down and still got away. He put himself in Marine Ford, where all the Marines' forces and Chichibuka and stuff were there, and he still got away. So, like, at a certain point, there wasn't really that much more that the world government could have been doing, because so many circumstances kept aligning to get Luffy out of jail, you know? Hamsham 863, thanks for the 2. Does Luffy introducing Zoro have any significance? If anything, it's downscale, because I think that Luffy should have introduced him more than, like, he's a member of my crew and don't forget it. It's like, you're treating Zoro like he's fucking Chopper. Like, that's the same sort of introduction you would give to Chopper. Say he's gonna be the world's strongest swordsman. Say he's gonna be the strongest swordsman of all time or whatever. Or say, like, he's the fucking, like, hype him up in some way. This is Zoro. And Zoro's thinking, like, yeah, tell him who I am, Luffy. Luffy's like, he's a member of my crew. Like, Usopp? Like, what the fuck? A member of my crew? That's, like, the most formal HR sort of way to hype up Zoro imaginable. It is your birthday, period. That's that sort of energy. What the fuck? If I'm Zoro, I'm pissed. I'm looking at Luffy and, like, up there with this giant-ass dragon, and I'm like, hey, I thought we were the dynamic duo. What happened to all of the cool moments that we had together? We're like, you know, What about the rooftop? What about the sea trade? What is this shit? You know? Who is this bitch? Luffy's like, I'm sorry, I've upgraded. Bane556, don't worry, Zoro. You will forever be a member of my crew. Bane556, thanks for the 2. Thoughts on people saying that One Piece flashbacks are tragedy porn? What? That's kind of funny. I mean, it's good drama. I don't know. Sanji was locked in, though. Yeah, locked in, basically like lighting a fire, burning off the thorns. That's like the most... Basically, the way that it was established, it sounded like Frankie could have shown up and burned off the thorns. Like, it sounded like anyone could have burned off the thorns. Bane556, thanks for the 2. Dami Reversi Loki versus the Strats is likely now. Thriller Bark parallel. I think that's the most dramatic thing that could happen in this scenario, for sure. But the only thing is just, like... I genuinely don't know how... Like, how do the Strats not just die? Why wouldn't they just die? Like, what stops them? I can't show the panel because it's a new chapter, but just look at the last page of the chapter. Again, that's... Am I crazy? That's the size of the Raigo, right? Is that not the size of the Raigo? And the Raigo is something that Enel had to use Maxim and charge up for God knows how long. And like Loki just does that as his basic Boro Breath attack. How did the Strats not die? Remember when we were hyping up like, oh, Nami's got Zeus now. Nami's got Zeus now. Like, she's got Yonko level firepower. Zeus is like a little spark. Like a cute little static shock compared to this shit. I'm not joking. How is this... Like, keep in mind, Elbaf is way bigger than most islands, right? So, this attack that Loki does at the end, how is it different than the ancient weapon Imu used to destroy Lulusia Kingdom? How is it different than Uranus? What's the difference there? It's the same as the Raigo. Like, it can destroy islands. I don't know how the Strats would not just die. Because against Oars, there was ways that Oda was able to write it to make it so, like, Oars wasn't an absurd opponent for them, you know? I don't know how he would write this fight to make any sense. Let's get Streamlights up to 100 real quick. The one thing I can think of is I think Ragnar would help fight against Loki in this scenario. So I think that would be the big boost. It would be the Straw Hats plus Ragnar, right? So then you've basically got Luffy, Yonko level, Ragnar, debatably, I don't know what people scale Ragnar to, but a very strong character, right? And then you've got, you know, Zoro and Sanji should get power-ups this arc. So, Nami does have Yonko level destructive capability. So I could see the vision. I could see the vision of them taking him on, and then, like, Skopra Gaban's out of shape. Jarl, if they pull out all the stops, like, have Bonnie turn Jarl back into his prime. If they pull out all the stops, I could see them doing stuff to Dami Reversied Loki. Because the thing is that Dami Reversied Loki would be stronger than what we're seeing here. So, like, when I'm saying, like, oh, this is like, he can basically shoot Raigos, right? That's him before the amp. So I just don't know how they don't die against him. Usopp with Ragnar? That would be really cool. That would be really cool. Because now it's a scenario where that could actually happen, you know? It could happen temporarily. Hold on. I'm thinking more about the Dami Reversi situation. Hold on. Yeah, I'm thinking more about the Dami Reversi situation. That would be really cool if Usopp's able to contribute in that format. Yeah, Luffy's immune, so that helps a lot. Luffy immune, Jarl. It could be doable. it's possible that if I think about it, maybe it'll be something like all lightning attacks Luffy's able to counter. So that could really, really help the crew. I'm just thinking through thoughts. Because Luffy can catch lightning. You know what's interesting? That almost suggests that the warrior god in the past was... If he was equal... Let's pretend he was equal to the previous user of the sun god fruit, right? That almost suggests that that guy was stronger than the sun god fruit user because Luffy's fruit is a hard counter to lightning abilities, right? So it's like Luffy's also got the matchup type advantage. It's interesting to think about. Eric, what's up, man? Thanks for the 2. Luffy is so far in front of Zoro, it's not funny. I mean, I will maintain Ashura Zoro is a cheat code for Zoro. I think Ashura Zoro puts Zoro into a lot of very high conversations. But it does not put Zoro into Loki conversation. Like, to me, it's just like, there's so much bigger fish in this... Like, there's a much bigger fish in this chapter than Luffy, is what it looks like to me, right? I might be underestimating Luffy in terms of how he might stack to Loki. Again, the matchup advantage could be really helpful. But, yeah, I think that... yeah, like, Ashura Zoro you can put in very high-level conversations, like Admiral Plus, genuinely. Admiral Plus Yonko, or whatever. That's just factually true based on what we saw of Ashura Zoro versus Kaido when Zoro was severely nerfed. But Loki's just such a different ballgame. Like, it's completely different. Also, you know what? People, okay, I think this chapter, if you're against Zoro Mihawk agenda stuff, this chapter is a big, big, big win in one way. Why is that? Because the Black Blade agenda just officially died, right? It is essentially confirmed this chapter that having a Black Blade does not mean you have better hockey than characters who don't have a Black Blade. It's just, we don't know what the details are of what causes a Black Blade. If I had to headcanon something based on the explanation we got, it sounds more like the frequency of battle, like it's slowly forged over battle, rather than just like, oh, my hockey's this strong, therefore my blade turns permanently black, you know? If that was the case, it wouldn't be forged through battle. But the Black Blade agenda essentially dies with this chat. There's no debate for it anymore. Unless you genuinely want to scale Mihawk's hockey above... I think even the most insane Mihawk fan would not go so far as to try to scale Mihawk's hockey above, like, Joy Boy or First World Joy Boy, you know? Tom, thanks for the 2. Law Seraphim kills Loki and takes fruit. Your favorite situation... No, I'd be so upset. There are no swords this chapter? Fucking Sun God had a sword. Sun God user from the first or second world had a sword. No Black Blade, though. Wait, what do you... How are people confused? We literally saw potentially the strongest character of all time with a sword in this chapter that was not black. What are people... Did you guys skip this section? What the hell? I thought this was like a prominent section that people would kind of zero in on because it's pretty interesting lore. But the Black Blade agenda is dead now. There's no discussion for it. One Piece fan 74, thanks for the 5. This isn't a super climax arc. All fights will go to Luffy. Zoro and Sanji will 2v1 Thorns. Extreme diff. It's true. I put out a video towards the start of Elbaf explaining that there is a pretty consistent pattern that Oda sticks to when it comes to which arcs the Straw Hats get 1v1s versus which arcs it's mostly just Luffy or Luffy and Zoro that get fights, right? But Elbaf I was hoping would be an exception. By all past patterns, Elbaf was not set to be an arc where the Straughts would get 1v1s outside of maybe Zoro. Luffy's a given, right? But outside of maybe Zoro, right? I hoped that Elbaf would be an exception based on its place in the story, Final War, exceptions and stuff. I still think some Straughts could get some 1v1s, but it's looking more and more like it might not be the case. Prophet Glutton says, but was he a swordsman, though? But isn't that the whole argument that Mihawk fans have, which is that if your main weapon is a sword, you're automatically a swordsman and therefore inferior to Mihawk? So you don't get to use that reasoning against Nika when he doesn't have the black blade. Tom says, Morge, you're being stupid here. I'm not promoting one side or the other regarding black blades, but this is really dumb logic. Wait, why? Isn't that the whole discussion? How's that? What? I thought the whole point was that Mihawk fans basically said that Black Blade puts Mihawk above all other, like, puts him above Rocks, Roger, etc., because Black Blade means that Mihawk is, he's got stronger haki, right? Stronger conquerors haki, right? I thought that was the reasoning, right? So, I mean, is your argument is consistent if you feel that Mihawk has stronger haki even than this, like, Sun God Fruit user, but I feel like Mihawk fans wouldn't make that claim, right? So the whole argument falls apart? It's a silhouette? That's not a silhouette. We literally... That's not a silhouette. You can argue that the body is a silhouette, but the sword is a fucking clear-ass sword. We know it's not a black sword. Like, that's not a question mark. Fucking the Giant and Ratatoskr are fully drawn-out characters. That's not what silhouette means. Oda is obscuring the body and the features of the Nika fruit user, but the sword is, in no world, is that a black sword. That's not a black sword. This is I feel like this is insanity. I feel like this is pretty clear. I don't even know what to say. That do you guys think that Nika was a Black Blade user? I think it's very clear that he was not. I think this is, to me, this is pretty cut and dry. Otherwise, he would be depicted as that, right? Momans, thanks for the 2. Why did Harold not eat the Nidhogg fruit before? Because it seems like Ragnar didn't choose him. And it seems like Ragnar's a pretty strong guardian or whatever. Justin, thanks for the 2. Is Marijua being on fire just a metaphor Emu uses? Maybe it's other parts of Marijua, not this part. TomTom says, Gear 5 can materialize objects and weapons out of thin air. Yes, and the one time that it did do that, Luffy turned it black. So, it doesn't really apply here. How do we even know if this is a real sword? Is one image on a character's idea of Nika a giant's idea? Yeah, and in that, it's not black. So even in the legends, he doesn't have a black sword. Also, why would that be Jarl's imagination, but then the giant himself is vividly depicted? Because the giant is fully drawn out, you know? Because I didn't make this argument back when we, like, Jarl was giving the previous explanation, you know, back in chapter, like, 1130-something. And we saw, you know, the silhouette. But this is like an actual action scene. You know, this is an action scene that we're being shown. XX Gravity, thanks for the 10. Loki has single-handedly raised the floor of power. We have never seen elemental attacks imbued with haki. How would Shanks be able to stack up? Shanks must be insanely strong. I'm not even going to get into how Shanks potentially beat Loki. I think it'd be really cool if Shanks straight up did that. But I'm not going to get into that until we... I think, like, we know Oda loves Shanks, but it just is so... Like, I'm not going to get into that. how Shanks beat Loki, what were the circumstances. It's entirely possible Shanks might just be that strong. We were told that his hockey compares to Joy Boy's. But I'm going to wait and see at the very least when we get evidence of what happened there, you know? Because Loki has raised the floor of power. It's just, there's nothing really similar to this, you know? Nothing really similar. It is crazy. Fulgora is also an elemental attack with Black Lightning. What's Fulgora? Fulgora One Piece. What? Can someone tell me what chapter that is? Oh, wait. Let's see. Chapter 1011. 1011. All right, let's see. Shanks probably did it in a cowardly way given how Loki spoke about him. No, because the thing that's established early in the story is that Shanks is not actually a coward. Like, you sound like fucking Higuma from chapter 1. That's literally verbatim, like, Higuma from chapter 1 talk. Like, you must be a coward because you didn't want to fight me in the bar. The whole point is that Shanks actually is a very brave character. Shanks is the one character in One Piece who, like, literally never has backed down from smoke. When it's like an actual fight. Like literally, like you go through the story, obviously Higuma and the Bandits in chapter 1, right? But literally, Mihawk shows up, first saga. Shanks is like, you here for a fight? Right? Shanks goes to Whitebeard's crew. Whitebeard pulls out his weapon. Shanks is like, okay, we can fight. Kaido tries to attack Marineford. Shanks rolls up. He's like, you want to fight me? Marineford, biggest war in the world. Shanks and his crew roll up. And Shanks is like, hey, you all like fighting so much. How about you fight me? Come fight us. We'll take on whoever. Right? That's the consistent pattern throughout the story. Marine Admiral shows up at Wano. Shanks is like, why are you bullying them? Come pick on me. Kid shows up. Shanks is like, if you want to fight, I'll fight. Like, that's the pattern with Shanks. Anybody that wants to fight him, he's always happy to take on the challenge, right? So that's the idea behind the character. He doesn't go out seeking fights ever, but the concept is that he will take on whoever wants to take him on. Jaquan, thanks for the 10. Do you ever feel fatigued from reading week to week? I've been reading for 16 years. Jesus, I'm old, but there are times when the arc structure feels very repetitive. I still like One Piece, though. I do get tired reading week to week when the arc hits certain sections, because I generally like we all know, like, One Piece is, I think, one of the best strengths of One Piece that I think a lot of other manga don't have the luxury of having is that One Piece is so successful. Like, One Piece has always taken its time to build its story and not tried to make every arc, like, super exciting, have super crazy twists or hype things early on. And then the further it's gone with One Piece's crazy success, it's gotten even more and more leeway to build and set arcs up and set up casts of characters and plot threads, etc. Like put it this way. You know the 5-6 chapters we had at the beginning of Elbaf, which were like the Straw Hats in Rodo's Legoland, right? You remember those chapters? It's a set of chapters that is purely for Oda's fun. Like, it's good for, like, you know, we didn't get amazing character interactions or anything, but it's purely for Oda to have some fun. Foreshadow some of the future of the arc, you know. It's just Oda having fun, right? It's a nice, easy, breezy way to start the arc. I cannot think of another modern shonen manga that could get away with just, like, with how competitive manga is, like an arc that, like, who can get away with just, like, throwing in 5-6 chapters of just stuff like that, like a little mini arc that's nothing. Like, there's not even it's against an not East Blue, against like a, you know, like a, I don't know how strong Roto, against clearly a pre-time skip level villain, you know? So I would say that, like, to answer your question, For early sections of a One Piece arc, I would like to be able to just sit back, let the chapters pile up, and then binge it. But on the flip side, when One Piece hits these sections of the arc where things are exciting week after week, like when God Valley was going on and like the peak of the Rocks flashback, the week to week experience is amazing because it gives you stuff to really think about and fuel your imagination, right? And you're just excited for the next bit, and like every moment hits harder because you're not binging at all, right? So like you have more time to sit with scenes and moments, right? So, and then the community experience, so that's really fun. So it just depends, depends on where in the arc it is. Like if I could have it my way, I would probably I would probably like let the setup section of every story arc pile up chapter wise, and then I would like to binge that and then be week to week for the exciting middle through end. Kingdom Key, thanks for the 2. Do you think One Piece could have better timescale? Better timescale. What does better timescale mean? Also, let's get the stream likes up to 100 real quick. What does better timescale mean? East Blue Luffy over Roto? I think it's a little hard actually to judge the Elbaf Giants because they did do that team attack, the Ikaku Sovereignty team attack, and took out an MMA. So that might mean that Roto is stronger than I thought, but we know he's not as strong as Hadruden, right? Hadruden's the captain. So all of those giant characters on the Giant Warrior Pirates are essentially below Makvi's level, right? So that's not too good. Henchme987, thanks for the 2. Is Bonnie still napping through all this? I fucking forgot about Bonnie. You know what else I just remembered this chapter? I've got a big question. What I'm trying to remember is, what the hell happened? What wedding was Shanks and Usopp at? What wedding were they at? Does anyone fucking remember this? They were at like a wedding or something. Right? Am I fucking crazy? Like, what's going on there? Right? Yeah, I don't know what Bonnie's doing, but I do think that Bonnie's going to come into play here. I think Bonnie and Kuma's storyline will come into play. We've still got the Ancient Lab stuff. And the craziest thing is we've still got Heaven Realm. Heaven Realm is really, really interesting to me because I think Oda's saving something. I think he's saving something because right now, look, I thought the MMAs were going to be a problem for this arc. I was genuinely like, I don't know how they deal with them because they're so big. Like, the only Straw Hats that could realistically fight them are presumably Zoro and Sanji, obviously Luffy aside. But Loki just took care of all of them, right? Sommers is essentially down. Maybe he's going to regenerate because they didn't use proper hockey or whatever for whatever reason. Sommers killing him. Maybe Sommers gets back up, but then you just got Sommers killing him, Dory, Broggy. It's not the best, It's not the best lineup of opponents. So I think Oda's got to pull something out soon. Either Dami reversing Loki or either Dami reversing Loki or something to do with Oda's got everybody versus Emu, but I just don't know how that would even work here. I think Bonnie is going to play a role. I'm looking at Bonnie and Jarl, potentially something happening there. Taptir Treviso, thanks for the 5-man. Nidhog getting the same treatment from Emu as Nika is making me think that we're getting gaslit again. Also, does my prediction count if Emu said it? Yeah, I've already got you down as the chapter prediction winner. There's 2 chapter prediction winners this week, actually, but I've got you down as one of the 2. And we are going to be starting the leaderboard thing starting next week. So we'll go back through past chapter prediction stuff to compile a leaderboard list. Julian Reed, thanks for the 5. Morge, I predicted we would get a Holy Land update. Does this count? Also, that attack is clearly top 1 in One Piece so far. Advanced Conquerors Haki, lightning larger than an island. I'm not kidding. I don't see what would be different between that attack versus Raigo or the Uranus destroying the Lucia Kingdom. Like, what's the difference? As for your prediction, I did not give it to you because I don't view that as a full Holy Land update. I think just seeing a panel of Pangaea Castle, I don't count personally. Right? Like, it's in the past, I think a common sentiment in One Piece when like talking about strongest attacks ever, I think Raigo was generally talked about as that. Either that or maybe like, you know, some of Whitebeard's Guru no Mi shenanigans, right? They do different things. But with the Raigo, the acknowledgement was that, well, that's like a special attack that Enel had to do a lot of setup. He had to build this fucking gigantic ship, be powered by Maxim, and then like it takes a long time to like it's essentially a big spirit bomb, right? But Loki can just do that. That's just his Boro breath. That's how is that not the best attack in One Piece? The only thing comparable to that is Raigo or the Lulusia Kingdom attack, like the ancient weapon attack. You know? Yeah. Tiptia, thanks to the 2. Nidhogg got less mention than Nika did in Wano. You're saying in the Elbaf arc? Yeah, I think that's one thing, which is that the Nidhogg fruit, it does feel a little... It depends how you view it. Because in Wano, Nika was just mentioned like once, right? By Who's Who. So we just got it mentioned once. And then after that, we got a mention from the Gorosei about how the Gomu Gomu no Mi actually has a secret other name. So that's, I guess, 2 hints right there. And then Luffy just awoke as Nika. You know, so I think that's not really that crazy different. Here, I guess the comparison would be Nidhogg was mentioned early in the arc by the children. It popped up a few times. But the thing is that Nidhogg wasn't framed as very different from any of the other things that the kids were mentioning, you know? Like, there was no reason to believe that Nidhogg was a bigger deal than Fenrir or whatever, right? Then we also saw the dragon in the mural. So you could argue that's a hint there. It was not a lightning dragon from what we saw. It breathes fire. But, you know, it's artistic license, the mural drawer or whatever. So, the Nidhogg is a little bit out of the blue. I mean, we all, like, in that stream, you all felt that most likely, we tried to predict Loki's fruit recently. People did land on it's most likely the Nidhogg fruit. But that was after we'd already seen Loki in action against Harold. So we already got to see a lot of silhouettes and everything like that, right? So it's kind of just like process of elimination. Zolden3410, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 30 months, man. Hey, Morge, I'm so excited for the live action. My girlfriend wasn't getting into the anime, but I'm now rewatching the first season with her, and she likes it a lot more. I'm hoping season 2 will be even better. Yeah, I think I really appreciate the live action just for the fact that it allows me to... I didn't realize that this was something that I actually really valued until after the fact, but the fact that the live action allows, you know, my family and some friends who are not anime fans to be able to experience a version of One Piece and at least get an idea of what the story's about, the characters, the world, the appeal of it, right? That's something I actually really, really appreciate about the live action. It's made me very happy because, like, there's people who are important to me in my life who know that this is what I do for my work, essentially, but, and I never really cared or pushed them to, like, hey, read One Piece or watch the anime or whatever. Like, I wanted to keep that sort of separate. I didn't feel like I've never, that I can think of, or I used to, before I was a YouTuber, I used to push people to get into One Piece all the time. Now I don't do that just because it's like, this is already such a big part of my life. I don't need everybody in, like, I like some separation. But I think I do realize with the live action that I really appreciate the fact that people at least understand the story that I'm covering to some degree, and, like, they can ask questions and they're curious and things like that about, like, where the story goes. And I like that a lot. So I really love the One Piece live action. Again, I love it just for the show that it is, but I also, outside of that, I like the fact that it has allowed people that I know to understand a little bit better the series that I'm so passionate about, that I've made basically my main job, you know? Let's get the stream likes up to 100 real quick. JP, thanks for the 10. So if the god Elbaf fought Nika and is fighting the serpent in the mural, Nika the Destroyer and the serpent were allies, would support your last video, even more if Blackbeard represents Nika the Destroyer. Oh, that's actually a very interesting idea. So I've got a very different angle that's coming out on this Sunday's video. So the video is delayed today. I've got a very different angle, but that is an interesting possibility that you're going down. And I'll clarify over and over here that I think they're fighting the Nika fruit user of that era, possibly the First World era, right? I think they're fighting the Nika fruit user. I maintain that I think that there's no evidence that Oda's ever going to actually establish whether Nika is real or not, like there actually is a being called Nika in the One Piece world, because it kind of defeats the point, and Oda's already spelled out that it's not relevant whether or not the gods actually exist, right? Because the warrior god of Elbaf it's not even a warrior god. It's a dude it's the Loki equivalent from the past. It's a really, really strong warrior who ate the Nidhog fruit, you know? And he's called a god of war. It's the same way that Ryuma is not literally the god of the blade. Like, he's not a god of swords. He's not a sword god, you know? Jaquan, thanks for the 5. I'm doing this just because I can splurge right now, but I see what you're saying. A lot of details marinate more with a slower pace. Happy $50, Pimp. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate it, man. Yeah. A lot of details do marinate more with the slower pace. It's just, other times when it's more set up, then you kind of, it's better to be able to read it all at once, you know? It just depends on the phase that the story's at. Tiptio, thanks for the 2, man. Betting odds of Nidhogg was the sun god of the First World. I don't think that's the case, personally. Loki is Luffy's Whitebeard agenda going strong. And yes, Whitebeard greater than Roger. I don't think it's ever implied in the story that Whitebeard's greater than Roger. I think Oda tries to make it as clear as possible that these two are equals. But yeah. Yeah, I think that Loki is Luffy's Whitebeard, though. We've been talking about that for some time. Yeah. We've been talking about that for some time. Grizzly Adams, thanks for the 2. Is Onigashima the war god? Wait for the Sunday video. We're putting a lot of pieces together. Wait for the Sunday video. Bane, thanks for the 2. Morge, type useless bum on Google and click images. The hell? Alright, let me go incognito mode. Went to images. Oh my god. Is this for real? I'm gonna share this with you guys. What the fuck? Is this for real? Is it just... I mean, I'm in incognito mode, so it should be generally not influenced by anything. Here, let me show you guys this. What the actual hell? Look, like, 3 of these posts are about Usopp. A list of why Usopp is a useless... Is there any hope for the most useless bum? What the fuck? Are you serious? This is fucked up. This is fucked up. This is not right. This is not right. How is Usopp dominating like general Google searches for useless bum? That's not right. That's not right. You all know that's not right. Oh my god. That's not right. XX Gravity, thanks for the 5. Do you think there are any clues that might reveal who the man marked by flames is in your eyes? If so, who do you think it could potentially be? There's so many mysteries running right now. The man marked by flames? No, I do not have a good theory on that character anymore. I thought it could be a God's Knight. The God's Knights are such bums now, I don't know. I still think there's a small chance it could be Shamrock. Reason being that Oda has revealed that Shamrock is important to the One Piece. Oda's said that before, right? 2, Oda did a drawing of Shamrock. Interestingly enough, Oda did a drawing of Shamrock at one point, and the caption was that he brings the storm, which is really interesting because, you know, the man marked by flames can supposedly create whirlpools, right? And then number 3, it's possible, there's a possibility that, like, marked by flames could refer to the red hair. Stretch, I know, but we don't really have that much else to go on. Like, the other best guess is, like, fucking, some people say dragon, and they talk about that. Like, at this point, either it is a character who's literally got some burn scar looking things, like Gabon. I personally don't think it's Gabon, but, you know. Or it's a character where the marked by flames aspect is more metaphorical than literal, in which case I might have to close this. I might have to bring the dogs in. In which case it could be someone like Dragon with the red tattoos, or Shamrock with the red hair, you know? Because the thing we learned is that the red hair is, you know, it's a striking visual appear. Like, Garling, the other celestial dragons don't have red hair. Hold on. I'm going to bring the dogs in 1 second. Syncoplia, thanks for the 5. Strange that Ratatoskr was separate from the hammer and somehow became the hammer. Wonder if they turned an existing creature into a devil fruit. I am super interested in the history behind that. Because, I mean, this is just what the legend is, right? So it's possible that there's some liberties with what went down there. This is just what the legend is. But yeah, the fact that it seems to have merged, it is something we've never really observed before. Came to possess, because maybe it's not a devil fruit, right? Like, maybe Ratatoskr is literally, like, it's literally just a being that possessed the hammer, right? It might not be devil fruit related, you know? Teptio, thanks for the 5, man. Nika, Nidhogg, and maybe Emus Fruit being the legendary mythical zoans confuses me, since why is Nidhogg a legendary zoan? Since why specifically? What does that mean? Isn't it just because of its power? Because it's really, really strong? JP, thanks for being a member for 35 months, man. I don't see Brook by Emu. Did Emu let him escape? I mean, Emu probably killed him. Oh, wait. He's already dead. Skull joke. Prophet Glutton, thanks for the 5. Loki is not Luffy's Whitebeard. It will still be Captain Kidd. Keep the faith. You know this to be true. Trust... Trust in the damned one, Jika. I'm going to say this. The Loki situation, it's actually I was pushing for Kidd's return. I thought he could do it. I'm realizing now what happened. I think that this is the case. This is fucked up, but I think this is the case. Okay? This might warrant a video at some point. And I've actually talked about this in the Yonko tier podcasts in the past, okay? Luffy was always going to have an equal, like a Whitebeard, right? That turns out to be Loki, okay? But Loki, like Oda's whole concept for Loki and the power of the character and the Loki's own past and history, etc., meant that Oda couldn't have Loki in the story earlier on, right? So it's not like Loki was ever going to, like, Loki was going to be Luffy's equal or rival, but not in the sense of like, they're coming up the grand line together, more so in the sense of like, okay, once Luffy's like Yonko level or whatever, now I'm going to introduce his Whitebeard, and that's saved for the end of the story. Like, there's a counterpart to the Sun God, yada yada, right? But it wasn't going to be like a long-running rival that Luffy kind of comes up the ladder with, right? So what happens earlier in the story, right? Oda's always got this concept of this Whitebeard to Luffy's whatever, right? He's got this in mind. That's checked off. That's sealed away in Elbaf, right? We know Oda's been planning Loki. Because now if you go back to Little Garden, it all just makes it like Oda's talking about the warrior god all the way back in Little Garden. We know that Oda's got ideas for this stuff back then, right? But story progresses, we get to Sabaody. And Oda's editors tell him, make this arc more interesting. Write in the supernova, right? Or write in some other element, right? So Oda comes up with the supernova. That's where the problem is. Because among the supernova, Oda essentially, he pulled, like, he's like, I need to make some rivals for Luffy. So what he did is he pulled from the future. This is what's so fucked up about the concept of Captain Kidd. Oda never wrote Kidd with the actual love of, like, a rival figure to Luffy. Because Kidd was always going to be a fucking placeholder. Kidd is a remarkably similar character. He's like a more mean version of Loki. Remarkably similar. He's still introduced with this, like, literally, like Loki introduced with this tongue out and this sort of gleeful, like, gleeful attitude or whatever. Like this, like, Kidd is the same prototype. He's a very similar prototype. It's just Oda went out of his way to make sure that Kidd is far less likable, Kidd is framed and introduced to us in this Loki, like he's supposed to be the Whitebeard to Luffy's Roger, right? In Sabaody, he's framed as Luffy's key rival, but then the way that Oda actually writes Kidd, especially post-time skip, is it almost feels like it's filled with hate. Like, this is a character that doesn't actually mean that much, a character that exists to continually be devalued to hype up Luffy. Why? Because Kidd is not made to last, because Kidd is essentially the stand-in for what Loki is supposed to be in the story later. And that's why, like, the timing is so blatantly obvious. The moment that we get to Elbaf, it's like literally a swapping out of batons. It's like swapping out the sub for, like, the actual main player. Kidd literally goes to Elbaf, is seemingly killed and removed from the story right before Oda introduces Loki, who is basically the same energy as Kidd, but a much better character and, like, infinitely stronger. Like, that is so fucked up. And that's, I've got no Law rant. That's why when Oda said that I was surprised that Law ended up becoming a more important character than Kidd, it's because Law was the character that Oda, like, Kidd was essentially supposed to be the stand-in. Like, that's all Oda's concept for Kidd was, like, the stand-in for a real rival for Luffy, right? Until, like, the actual rival came along. Law didn't have that role, so Oda could actually get a lot more interesting with Law. It's kind of like how Capone Beige, Oda could come up with a much more interesting role for Capone Beige, because it's like, it's adding an element rather than just being like a stand-in substitute element for something later in the story, you know? Like, Law was essentially always going to be his own character, and Oda probably had fun the more that he wrote Law, because he was a unique character. There was no character like Law in the series up to that time. Kidd was always just a stand-in, a temporary substitute for Luffy to have a rival figure till Loki showed up. That is fucked up. I think it's fucked up in the sense that, like, it's just such a waste writing-wise to do that, and it's a waste of time for the readers. People get invested in the character. People have hopes for the character. It's a waste of Big Mom's storyline. It's a waste of a lot of things. It's a waste of, like, just writing space in Wano in general. If Kidd comes back, I will apologize and recant all of this, but it's a damn, like, this is what it's looking like right now, because for a long time I was like, there's still room for Kidd to come back. There's still room for Kidd to come back. But now I'm just like, if he comes back, what is his role? Luffy's got a friendly equal now, and it's Loki. And Kidd is never going to be that strong. Kid has so much catch up to do just to be competitive with where Luffy's at right now. JP, thanks for the 5. People saying Barbell is the one marked by flames. I'd rather quit One Piece. Barbell upscale, huh? If he's so strong that no one could get the road poneglyph for so long. Kid was bargain bin Loki. That would be funny. I mean, I think literally it is. Like, look at Kid's design and look at Loki's design. Look at the personality that they exude early on and compare. It's damn similar. Look at the role that Kid seems set to play for Luffy and the role that Loki is actually set to play for Luffy. I don't know. And look at the timing of Kid being removed from the story and Loki being introduced. It could not be any. I think it's very, very it's very, very transparent. I think what the wheels that turned when Oda was told by his editors to create some rivals for Luffy. Oda was like, well, I've got like a rival or like an equivalent figure planned, but he comes way later in the story. Fuck it, I'll just do a prototype version of him and insert him beforehand, you know? Tio Treviso, thanks for the 5. I'm more disappointed that the big reason it was Ancient Giant to be needed was the fruit scales with size, which doesn't do anything unique for Zoans. What do you mean? I mean, it does, right? Like the fruit scales with size. Like the biggest advantage of this fruit is the simple scale of it, right? Parvision had a theory that Loki is the man marked by flames and he ate the poneglyph law. Oh, that would be crazy. Why would Loki be marked by flames, though? Esteban Bonber says, is this the first Kid rant? There's been Kid rants in the past. I've done a full video talking about how Kid is like the worst rival in fiction or in manga. But this is kind of beyond... How do I explain this? This goes beyond the character in a sense. This is more so a rant about Oda's writing, I think, because to create a character that takes up that much space and real estate in the story for so long, and to frame it deliberately to give readers the expectation that this is a long-running rival, right? Like, that's not something we made up. No one's sitting around being like, I think Basil Hawkins is supposed to be like Luffy's main rival. None of us had that thought, right? Kid was framed in that light. So to do that and have readers believe that for so long, and to do so much to keep feeding that sort of narrative, and then to do this bizarre thing in Wano where like it's just such a muddy way to write the climax, where like this long-running storyline between Luffy and Big Mom is actually just like tossed to this throwaway character that you, the author, know is just a throwaway character, but to toss it to him, so then that storyline is resolved very unsatisfactorily, like very, very unsatisfactorily, with like no one even defeats Big Mom. She's like dropped into a hole, literally, like she's dropped into a hole to remove her from the story, because you don't want to give this fake rival a big win, because that's contradictory, right? Like it's not supposed to actually be a rival to Luffy. You don't want to hype him up too much, right? So it's like this weird in-between thing. And then the finale of the arc, it's treating it like yeah, Luffy, Kid, and Law, the big three trio that saved Wano. Kid's Luffy's rival, 3 billion berry. Like, it's just bizarre how much you're giving the spotlight to this character and like trying to make readers invested in him as a character. Like, what are we supposed to feel this entire time? Are we supposed to feel excited about Kid as a character? Are we supposed to be feeling like consistently disappointed in how he's turning out as a rival? Are we supposed to feel excited that Luffy is sharing the spotlight for so much of Wano and like sharing his bounty and stuff with this dude that we don't like, and like we don't know what we want? Like, we want him out of the story, or like we want him either out of the story or like not written in the story in the first place, or like just do more for him. He's just this like black smudge on the story over and over, where it feels like, is Oda just fumbling this character? And then finally you get the reveal that, oh, I'm just actually just removing him from the story because he was actually just like a fake character. He was just like a dummy character, essentially. This character that I've written the story for so long, so clumsily, was just a dummy character. Because the real rival for Luffy, I was going to introduce him in Elbaf. So now that we're at Elbaf, I'm going to kill off whatever. I'm going to swap in Loki, and now we got the real deal. And Loki's very exciting, but that still means that you took us through our paces for so long with this kid character for such a long period of time. There was never any real point that was made about this character. No real, like, you can't draw that much thematic meaning. It's just there to give a semblance of a rivalry that never really feels real, but does take up a lot of screen time and does muddy the story and give us a lot of, like, unsatisfying segments, you know? It's just bizarre. All of which to lead to basically being like, yeah, this character that I pretended was really relevant for a long time is actually not relevant at all. It's crazy. I'm hoping Kid still has a role to play. I do still hope Kid has a role to play, but now it's no longer because I hope that he's like a legitimate rival for Luffy. Now it's more so just like, tell me that Oda didn't just waste our time for this entire, like, this entire character. Like, tell me that it wasn't actually just like Oda just fucking around or like almost actively ruining parts of the story by inserting this irrelevant character in such big spots over and over again, you know? All just to keep up a ruse that this character is supposed to be a real relevant rival for Luffy, a ruse that never even feels really convincing. It just feels like it feels like Oda's fucking up Luffy's rival, right? And then the reveal later on is like, ta-da, he was never actually Luffy's rival. It was just a big gag the whole time. It's like, well, then it's just a waste of storytelling. You could have, like, what do I say so many times about Wano? Like, so much space is taken up by so many characters. Even just eliminating one character that's taking up so much space like Kid would have done wonders. I don't know. Tiptier Treviso, thanks for the 2. So Law and Kid were filler rivals of One Piece. I don't know about Law, because Law was never truly presented as a rival to Luffy. I'd say maybe at Sabaody, he was in a sense presented as a rival. But even in Sabaody, it felt like Kid is kind of the one that Oda's pushing as like the guy that's gunning for Luffy, that's like Luffy. Law fucking saved Luffy at Marineford. I never, like, since then, I never really got the sense that Law is truly a rival figure. And, like, even just out of the gate in the time skip, like, Law's friendly. He extends an olive branch. He's like, yeah, let's be allies. And throughout the alliance, even though I talk so much about how Law stole the spotlight over and over in a very annoying manner, the reality is that throughout Punk Hazard and Dressrosa, Law doesn't frame himself as a rival to Luffy, and instead frames it more like, yeah, like, Doflamingo, you might be able to beat me, but don't underestimate Straw Hat. Like, Law almost puts Luffy above him. Law makes it clear he's not going after the One Piece. Law succeeds as a side character. I don't like him and the role that he took up in the story, but the reality is he was a success with the readership, right? I don't like him for personal reasons, not because his writing's not good, right? I don't like because of what I prefer to see in the story, which would have been greater focus on the Straw Hats and not on this random dude. But I still respect the writing around Law and the storytelling that it did give us. Kid is not the case, and that's reflected in the reader base's opinion of Kid, where Oda did try to actually push Kid as a rival. That puts Kid in a very specific situation, like a specific position in storytelling, that we have a lot of expectations for this character. And Oda continually, like, pushed this character. It's like he kept pushing this character on us, but also, like, in a weird way, deliberately writing him badly over and over, and in a manner that disappointed us over and over, because Oda didn't actually want us to like or get too attached to this character, or ever feel like he's actually a character that we want to see as a long-running rival for Luffy. So it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. Law essentially became his own thing. It's been a long time since I've ever considered Law to be a rival for Luffy. If anything, it felt kind of, like, silly and out of place when, like, during the Onigashima raid, there were a couple points where, like, Law actually was, like, trying to compete with Luffy. And it was like, dude, that's not you. You've never tried to compete with Luffy in the past. Like, that's been Kid. Kid from the get-go, like, in Udon and stuff, has, like, been competitive with Luffy. Luffy's been competitive with Kid. Law's been very cordial and non-competitive with Luffy, and if anything, kind of lets Luffy have his way. He kind of puts Luffy ahead of him and everything. So I was kind of like, this feels like a little forced in the moments when, like, it was just moments when it was Luffy, Law, and Kid together that Law would act like he's a rival to Luffy again. But outside of that, Law just doesn't act like that. He doesn't even act like he's interested in the One Piece, yada yada, right? So Law carved out his own niche in the story. Kid was supposed to have a niche, but it turned out to be a fake niche, you know? Again, this is not actually even a critique of Kid, because at this point, it's like, this is more so a critique of the author, which is two different things. I know that sounds silly because the author writes every character, but in this case, it's like, feel like if Kid is out of the story, then that means that Oda essentially wrote this as a character that was always meant to be a repeatedly disappointing, time-wasting, and unsatisfying character just to mislead readers, which is more so it's not even Kid's fault at that point. Obviously, it can't be the character's fault either way. They're not real, but it's very much like it was a nothing character that Oda pretended is a something character for a long time, is what I'm saying. Sorry, I'm just making a note. Grizzly Adams, thanks for the 2. Tom is the man marked by flames. Saul precedent. I hope Tom's not back. That's all I can say. I fucking hope Tom's not back. Let the man die. Because, obviously with Tom, you can be like, well, technically, we never saw him die. He was just taking any slobby. But, the idea is still the same, which is you're selling us on the notion that we're never going to see him again. That's what makes it sad. I don't think Tom's the man marked by flames, though. Tio Trevisa, thanks for the 2. Kid should have died defeating Big Mom if he is filler. I think he should not have defeated Big Mom in the first place if he's filler, because Big Mom is such an important villain in the story. Having her just go out to a throwaway filler character is pointless. It's truly pointless. It would genuinely have been much better writing if, let's say Loki was the, what do you call? Let's say Loki, let's say Kid didn't exist, right? And Loki is the true rival to Luffy that was set up all along, right? Have Loki defeat Big Mom. It's so simple. It's so simple because, keep in mind, that's what everyone believed in the first place when we got Big Mom's backstory and everything, that, Big Mom's story is going to circle back to Elbaf. That was the general consensus. I remember I did a theory explaining why all signs point to Big Mom actually going to Wano and being taken down in Wano. But at the time, that was a surprising theory. That was one of the theories that got people talking about my channel because it wasn't a common belief. At that time, the common belief was either Big Mom's story resolves in Elbaf, or Luffy will literally return to Toto Land, like he said, and defeat Big Mom there. Nobody had on their bingo card that Big Mom is going to Wano and she's going to be defeated there, right? But in retrospect, considering the way everything played out, have Big Mom be defeated by Loki. It's so simple because it connects everything, right? If you want Big Mom to be defeated not by Luffy, but by Luffy's rivals, right? Oda did it with Law and Kid, which were characters who he didn't plan in the first place. Just have it go to Luffy's actual rival, Loki. That's a good way to hype up Loki right away. And it fits the fucking storytelling because Big Mom and the Elbaf Giants have had this long-standing enmity with each other. And Loki and Big Mom's stories already overlapped with the whole Lola storyline. It's so simple. It fits character storylines. It does more for the characters. It brings Big Mom's story full circle to Elbaf. Loki's story already had Big Mom connections. The Elbaf Giants already had this whole long-standing Big Mom rivalry and everything like that. It's so simple. Just have that happen. Instead, Big Mom, after all of this setup for the character, she just goes down to a character that's not even a real character, which is Kid, who has no connection to Big Mom. He raided her territory once to steal a poneglyph, but he never even met. They had no previous animosity. Kid did not say Big Mom's name once throughout Wano. His whole focus was Kaido. Big Mom didn't say shit about Kid. She did not mention Kid in Wano. She was all about Luffy, right? It's better for Big Mom's story. It's a better way to establish a quick win for one of Luffy's actual rival. It lines up Luffy defeating Kaido, Loki defeating Big Mom. It's simple stuff, right? It's just bizarre the direction the story actually went, which is Big Mom, which seemed like such an important character for so long, who had so much storytelling set up, Oda ultimately threw her away to hype up a rival for Luffy that's not even a real rival, it's more like a fake rival, and who's going to be gone from the story right afterwards anyway. It's really strange. It doesn't do anything for any of the characters. Even Law, like, if you wanted to give Law a big win, I'm sure there was a way to do that in Wano without giving him Big Mom, because Law had no connection to Big Mom. Like, no connection whatsoever. It was completely random. Revo59, thanks for the 5. In all the depictions of Nika in Legend, he has a sword and shield. Does this suggest that there was a real Nika, and will Luffy ever use these weapons? I maintain over and over that, like, the way the story is written, Oda has tried to tell us, like, in a million different ways. Like, in Skypiea, the messaging. In Egghead Island, the messaging. Like, it's spelled out for us. Whether or not gods are real or not in One Piece, the idea is that doesn't matter. The idea is that the message is that what people believe in. This is a story about the magic of people's beliefs, their dreams. What people believe in, that's the real magic, right? So if you believe in a god enough, it can be real, right? It can be real. So I don't think there was a real Nika. I think that whoever, probably the first world user, maybe we're seeing Joy Boy, but I imagine it's the first world user. That version of what do you call? That version had what do you call? Probably use weapons or something like that. I don't think Luffy will ever use weapons, because I think that would infringe on, like, it's been established in the story that Luffy is not good at using weapons like swords and stuff, and that's actually an important point of why he needs crewmates to do things that he can't do. Like, Luffy even picked up a sword in Wano and he couldn't use it. That's an important part of his character. I would also add that one thing that's interesting, especially if we look at the mural, one thing that I've talked about is that the mural suggests that something changed about the world once that sun was touched. I talk a lot about it a lot in my big mural theory, but the main thing that seems interesting is that the thing that likely changed after, if you read the mural in order, it's likely the thing that changed after the sun was touched is that people's imaginations allowed them to start, like, bringing their imaginations to life, like devil fruits to life, okay? Because the simple reason I don't believe that there ever was a real sun god Nika, or it's not going to be answered in the story if sun god Nika is real or not, is because the legend of Nika is when people are having hard times, right? People are having hard times, they're enslaved, they're oppressed, they pray hard enough, and the god Nika arrives, right? In the mural, it's explained in the first world that man was a slave, but Nika conveniently didn't show up till man touched the sun. You see what I'm saying? So, if Nika was real during the time of the first world, then according to the legend, it should have been just people praying and shit that caused Nika to show up. That's not the case. Man touched the sun, and then all of a sudden, there's a sun god. You see what I'm saying? It's far more likely that what actually happened is that after touching the sun, certain magical effects started to come into play where now devil fruits could be real, right? So now, finally, people praying and believing in Nika created a Nika devil fruit, and now you've got the sun god in real life, right? Otherwise, Nika, the whole story of Nika is a lie, which is that it's not actually true that, you know, the people pray and, pray and hope and stuff, and then the sun god Nika will show up to save you. No, it's people pray and hope, and if you touch a special sun, then the sun god Nika will decide to show up. That sounds like a pretty shitty sun god, right? He ignores everyone's prayers till they touch the special sun. I don't think that's that's essentially contradicting the entire legend, right? So the legend makes a lot more sense if the real sun god never showed up in the first place. Rather, people prayed for a long time about this idea of a sun god who would come save them. The sun was touched. The sun allows people's imaginations to turn into devil fruits and everything like that. There's a lot more in the Harley that suggests that to be the case. And then once that's the case, then of course people's predominant prayer so far, which is for a god to come save them, that becomes the first devil fruit that forms. Somebody eats that, the sun god arrives, right? Because there's basically two ways to look at it. Either the sun god was real, but then he's a piece of shit because he didn't show up in the first world until people press the magic button, which is not what the legend says, right? So either the sun god is a giant piece of shit who does not actually care about people, or there was no sun god in the first world. Touching the sun allowed devil fruits to form, which again is supported by other texts in the Harley. And then from there, the first devil fruit that came about was the sun god fruit. One Piece is pretty humanist driven. Yeah, that's the thing. Like it's explained over and over that it's our power for our beliefs that can turn things, like anything you imagine, you can bring into reality. That's the power of dreams, etc. Right? And Skypiea harps on the idea that like it doesn't reject the idea of gods, but it rejects the idea of like believing in gods rather than yourself, if that makes sense. Like to save you, to rule you, stuff like that. Like this god that they all believed in the first place, this great snake, wasn't a real god. Like that's a huge part of Nolan's thing. Like why are you, like you guys you have the power to fix your situation. Why are you waiting for this deity to fix the land or whatever, right? Like it rejects that idea. It's not anti-religion. One Piece has strong religious themes because it supports the idea of belief, but it does not suggest that like God is literally going to show up and save everybody. That's on you. JP, thanks for the 2. Any ideas on where Weevil as a character will go? This stream, like a lot of interesting, like long-standing little mysteries are being brought up because there's just so much going on right now. It's impossible to say where all of these different threads will land, you know? It's like Oda's thrown so many different balls in the air, and it's like it's different shiny objects that are catching our eyes. So like right now we're really focused on Loki and this Nidhog stuff and everything like that, but it's like, well, what about Bonnie over there? What about the Ancient Lab? What about the Heaven Realm? Fuck, what about Weevil? For me, I just remembered this stream, what the fuck about Shanks' wedding? What wedding did they go to? XX Gravity, thanks for the 5. With Garb's capture, what do you think Aokiji's end goal is? What significance does capturing his mentor mean for Aokiji's ultimate goal and justice? Aokiji is a big question mark. There's people who've said that he works for the Revolutionary Army. There's people who think he works for the Revolutionary Army. To me, the thing with the Revolutionary Army is like, one, it'd be cool if Dragon's like number 1 and number 2. It's like Aokiji and Sabo, so you've got like ice and fire. Just a random little thought. But what is Aokiji's end goal? I literally don't know. I really, really don't know. Because I'm like, when did he get, like, what, because I'm stumbling through my words here, but I'm just trying to think, if he decided that he wants to overthrow the Celestial Dragons, right, that's a really sharp change, because he was, Ohara, that whole incident upset him, but he was still on the side of the Marines all the way up till Marineford War. And in Marineford War, it's not like he was like deeply conflicted about fighting on the Marine side. He was just like, yeah, I'm doing this, like. So the fact that for him to change so drastically, like what would take him from like being 100% on the Marine side, or like 80-90% on the Marine side in the Marineford War, right? Like maybe it's some internal conflict, to suddenly being like, I want to quit the Marines and actually fight against the world government. That's like a big shift that I feel like we don't really see the trigger for, because we're told he lost the duel to Akainu. And that makes sense as the trigger for Aokiji being like, you know what, I'm done with the Marines, because I think like he was already unhappy with the morality of the Marines up till that point, but not so much that he wanted to leave, right? With Akainu taking over, he's like, okay, now the Marines are probably going to go into a direction that even I'm not comfortable with, and so he left. But After that, that's like a really hard 180 to go with, like, you know what? I'm actually going to shift from like trying to be the boss of the Marines to like trying to tear down the whole system. So I don't know. I don't know what his full plan is. He's a very interesting character for sure. Uche KK, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 41 months, man. Sorry, let me respond to this. Uche KK, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 41 months. Just some emojis. Taptio Treviso, thanks for the 10. Nidhogg being Nika's rival when they share no connections. Fucking Buddha would make as much sense. Nidhogg just feels like Oda wanted a Norse zone to be above other mythological zones. It doesn't fit. So, I mean, it's basically... it's Oda's world. I agree with the idea that it is kind of random. From an outside world perspective, it feels like... Because the sun god is Oda's own creation, right? So it's like, okay, this is a One Piece specific myth. But then Oda being like, there's so many different mythologies. So many different things to pick from. It does feel very random. And thematically, there's not really any, like, sort of... Like, as far as I know, in Norse mythology, the Nidhogg is not in any way connected to... I don't know if it's even... one of the most important... I know it's important in Norse mythology, but, like, if you asked people before this, right, like an average layperson about Norse mythology, they would be able to tell you stuff about, like, Surtur, right? Like, I think Surtur would be a common guess. I think the MCU probably helps that a little bit. I think some people would be familiar with the idea of, like, a wolf, you know? They might know the name Fenrir, might not. I think some people would be aware of, like, the World Serpent, probably because of, like, God of War games and stuff like that. You know, like, so those are, like, fringe knowledge to casual people, right? I do not know how many people, like, 1% of people might have heard of Nidhogg before, so it feels very random. And then Ratatoskr is, like, fucking, you got to be a Norse mythology expert to know about that shit, right? So it does feel really random to me that, like, out of all mythologies, Oda was like, well, Norse mythology is going to be the main one in One Piece. That's going to, like, I'm going to have fruits for and everything. And among the Norse mythology deities, I'm specifically going to pick, like, a less well-known one, but it's just going to be really important in my story. That's kind of random to me. Like, if Oda had rolled with something like Surtur, I think people would have been like, okay, it seems like Norse mythology is really where we're going with, and Oda's picking, like, a preeminent Norse deity, right? And then if Oda had gone with something that most people know, like Typhon from Greek mythology, right? It's like, damn, Oda's going with, like, a really big heavy hitter. But the Nidhogg is, like, it just feels very, very strangely specific. I think that's just more so about Oda's personal preferences. Growing up, he probably found that stuff cool, and he just wanted to work it into the story. You know? Grizzly Adams, thanks for the 5. More just Grimace take. Kid was a placeholder until Loki. My Grimace take, oh, the Straw Hats were placeholders until Loki. No. No, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that. God of War fans at least know if Ratatoskr and Nidhogg. Okay, maybe not as far as I got in the game. I got to the point where there was the World Serpent, and then I dropped the game a little bit later. JP says, yeah, I thought Nidhogg and Jormungandr were the same being until recently. Esteban Burr says, hey, Morge, nice posters you have there. If you like those posters, well, look forward to next month, first of all. But I've got something else for you all at the moment. And we're almost out of time for this. So make sure you get your hands on this deal while you can. So we've got our Admiral hoodie collection. You cannot find hoodies like this anywhere else. Devil Fruit inspired hoodies, where you essentially, you feel like you have the Logia, right? So you got Aokiji, Akainu, and Kizaru. You can get this right now where the deal is almost over. You can buy 2 hoodies and get the third one free. So you can get the whole set for the price of 2, and each hoodie for this month, until the time runs out, is $80 off. So you can buy 2 discounted hoodies and get a third one completely free. So make sure you get this deal before this runs out. We are not doing this deal again in the following month. We are switching things, right? Just because of the way that production works with this. So make sure you get your hoodies right now while you can. Let me post this deal. JP, thanks for the 10. I always figured Aokiji, haunted by Ohara, wanted to know the truth like Robin, like Law, and during time skip, Blackbeard was a clear contender to bet on to get to the One Piece and the truth. Why didn't he just team up with the Straw Hats? Because it's like, Aokiji does care about morality. He knows the Blackbeard parts are terrible and that they do terrible things. So, him teaming up with Blackbeard to me is interesting. That's the one thing that makes me wonder, like, did he team up with the Revolutionary Army or something like that? I don't know. I just got a really random, interesting theory about Aokiji, but it's so random I don't know if, like... this is a very random theory. I'm going to write this down before I forget. Yeah, I do think that Aokiji wants to know more about the truth of the world, and he's got an agenda and everything like that, but I think that it's Oda's keeping a mystery what exactly he wants, for sure. No, I'm not going to tell you guys, because it could be a video. Straw Hats were weaker than the Blackbeard parts? Oh, you're right. That was a stupid thing for me to say, because, like... That's, the Straw Hats were obvious, like, yeah, you're right. Why wouldn't he, like, he's going to join some pre-time skip crew. Straw Hats made their waves now, but yeah, you're right. Miss Super Chat, I'm sorry, from Aryan, hold on. Aryan Gokal, thanks for the 5. Kid could join Cross Guild. He knows about the man marked by flames. They could get the last poneglyph. Sets up Straw Hats versus Cross Guild for Zoro to fight Mihawk. The thing is that, like, Kid joining Cross Guild is weird because Kid is not... He's like a Conqueror's Haki user, right? Like, he's not going to... I mean, Cross Guild is an alliance. Kid's cool with joining alliances, kind of. Even though he said that he didn't want to join any more alliances. I think he might have changed his ways after Wano, after teaming up with Luffy and Law again. So Kid joining Cross Guild could make sense, but then it's weird because then he's no longer the big kahuna of Cross Guild. Like, he goes from being, like, potentially Luffy's rival and framed as Luffy's rival and trying to become a Yonko, a Pirate King, etc. himself, to just, like, I don't know, the second strongest of Cross Guild, like a first mate kind of figure, essentially. Yeah, I don't. Kid just likes bumming off of other people. Yeah. Oh, Tom, I do have a request for you for like a tier list creation. I'll message you on Twitter afterwards. Yeah, sorry, Aryan, for missing that earlier. Kid is the most stereotypical Conqueror's Haki user in the series. Yeah, just like loud, brash, headstrong. Kid could be the key for Buggy to get Captain John Treasure if it has something to do with the magnet fruit. Yeah, it could be cool to see Kid connect back there. I will seriously apologize if it turns out that Kid actually has some significance. That could be really cool. Kid joining Cross Guild, maybe there is potential there. It's just like, even if that lead, like, who does Kid fight anyone in the future? He wouldn't be the strongest on Cross Guild. He wouldn't be the captain. Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know. I don't even know how he'd get along with, like, Mihawk and Crocodile. Cross Guild really would be, like, the island of misfit toys at that point. Like, we were all important characters in the story in different ways, but Oda didn't know where to put us, so, like, now we're all together. That would be kind of cool. It would make Cross Guild pretty busted if they've got Kid. Like, Mihawk obviously speaks for itself, but then if they've also got Kid and Crocodile, who people speculate to be first mate level, so then that's two very strong characters. And Kid's obviously got Conqueror's Haki, so, like, he's got the potential if he learns how to use coding. Yeah, I just don't know. That's an interesting idea. That's an interesting idea. Kid's fruit has so much potential. His whole character in every aspect is such a waste. Yeah. It's true. True. We're gonna call stream in a few minutes, just because ultimately we streamed pretty late today. Schedule got shuffled because of chapter stuff. Tom said, "Please read this if you'd be so kind." All right. Okay, Tom is making an argument about Black Blades here. He sent me a document to look at. I'm not arguing the merit of a Black Blade or Shanks versus Mihawk. I'm simply saying this is a silly argument. In chapter 1111, Luffy uses a black baseball bat. However, he explicitly painted it black. Black paint, lol. Moreover, even if it wasn't defaultly black, you can't say it's a black blade. I think we can all agree that materializing a black object isn't the same as forging a black blade. 2. The image we're referring to is of Nika and not Joy Boy. You and I both agree that Nika isn't necessarily confirmed to have literally existed as a person, therefore I don't think the color of the blade matters in a meaningful way. Point 3, the image of Nika is conjured up by Yarl's retelling of a legend from Elbaf. Firstly, Elbaf has historically been a culture centered on war. Even if Nika existed, citizens of Elbaf commonly depicted Nika with a sword doesn't definitively mean he actually used a sword. It's easy to reason that a war-centric nation would favor iconography with a sword and a shield. It's already established that there's two separate ideas of Nika, and again, this is directly stated to be a legend and not history. Yeah, so the reasons I'd push back on that is just, I hear what you're saying. I'm not saying that this is set in stone, but I would simply push back on the fact that, one, like, if you remember, I wasn't talking about Nika not having a black blade, all of that stuff, back when Jarl first gave us that image. I think it's even the image that's, what the hell? Why is this doing this? The fuck? How do I make this stop? Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear, but this is making a noise. What the fuck? Stop doing this. Stop. Okay, I think it's good. Anyway, yeah, back then when Jarl was talking, like when he was first talking about Nika and we got the image of Nika with the white sword and everything like that, like in earlier chapters, I don't really push that because that was, that's a silhouette, whatever, right? But here, yeah, we're getting a retelling of a scene, but the scene is fucking detailed. The only thing that's black is Nika's body, but the visual of the giant is very clear. Like, that's not very ambiguous. This isn't like the Kaido silhouette that we once got or the Loki silhouette that we once got. This is a scene that we're being shown. 2, the argument that, well, Nika pulls out various weapons, like, like Luffy pulled out a baseball bat, etc. That would hold, except for the fact that now it's consistently being depicted that, like, Nika does seem to use a sword. In the past era, whichever world this was in, he does seem to use a sword, right? He is being depicted consistently now multiple times as, like, a swordsman, right? So that's pretty different than, like, oh, this is just, like, a thing that he happened to pull out at one point, That's all I'm saying. Like, at this point, I think we can agree that, one, there is consistent recollections of Nika in some past era, either First World or Second World, being a swordsman, right? That's consistent recollections. 2, the scene that we were just shown is in detail, right? It's it's not like a vague sort of scenario. We straight up are getting the God of War's design. We're straight up seeing Ragnar here, right? Nika is the only character that Oda's keeping as a silhouette, but that's just the body and features. The sword is literal, right? Like, that's... The rest of him is... We take it as is, you know? Like, this isn't like a vague sort of depiction. This seems to be the actual design of the God of War, right? Which would indicate that we are seeing Nika as a swordsman in the past. The blade is not black. Like, we're getting multiple depictions at this point. Nika in the past used a sword, was a swordsman. This wasn't like a one-off, like, ah ha ha hee hee, I'll pull out a baseball bat type thing. He seems to use a sword in battle. It's not a black blade, you know? That's... I don't know why this is like a crazy take. I don't think anything I said there is wrong. Nika using a sword does not make them a swordsman. Okay, so I mean, like, then that destroys Mihawk fans' entire arguments, right? Like, the whole argument is then gone, right? Because, like, I thought the whole argument hinged on... And, I mean, I back this argument, right? Like, I'm on board if you are clearly using a sword in battle as, like, a primary weapon, you're a swordsman, right? Like, I've supported that argument for Mihawk, right? That's why I eventually shifted to, I think Mihawk is stronger than Shanks, you know? But now I'm pushing back specifically on the Black Blade argument, because if we can acknowledge that, you know, Nika is a swordsman in the past, in one of the First World or Second World, we can also acknowledge he doesn't have a black blade, right? So it goes both ways. So it seems like the black blade part does not seem to matter. TomTom says, yes, Nika has been portrayed with a spear too. Yeah, but that was in Who's retelling. And that was very much like, that was literally the sun, like the actual god Nika, right? Like, that was the concept of the god Nika. That's what people imagined the god Nika to be, right? And that was literally a silhouette. You cannot compare that to this, where at this point, we're being shown Nika multiple times, and this is like an actual duel scene that we're seeing, where Nika is like the sun god fruit user. The Nika fruit user seems to have been a swordsman in one of the past 2 eras, but not a black blade user, right? So that's different. Who's literally referring to the god Nika that people imagine, right? That is irrelevant to what the Nika fruit user fights like, right? So a Nika fruit user in some era was a swordsman. In today's era, just Luffy fights with straight hands, right? But the fact is, it seems like in one of the past eras, the Nika fruit user was a swordsman. Grizzly Adams, thanks for the 5. Mihawk sucks because he's not as raw as Zoro. Zoro would have cut his own arm off and even the odds instead of pouting for a decade. Wait, what? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, like, what, like Shanks, you're saying? Like Shanks cut off his arm? I don't know. TomTom says, correct me if I'm wrong, but all the sword depictions have been from Giants and the mural, which is in Elbaf. Yeah, but I'm saying that this, like, again, I didn't use those examples previously to argue against the Black Blade thing. Here is different because now we're being shown a scene. I don't think you can deny that this is like an actual scene. Like, do you think that this is the actual warrior god of Elbaf's look? Like, I think that this is actually his design, right? We're being shown a scene. He's using his hammer. He's got Ragnar. Why would you assume that that part is accurate, but then for some, Oda's just making up something random with Nika? That, to me, that's just like a very, that's cherry picking, right? Because I think that's just being disingenuous at that point. Jarl is talking about the god Nika. It's literally alongside their god of war. It's fruit users from the past. It's fruit users from the past because we already know, we already know this. The god of war is a dude that died. He's not a literal god. His master died. It's explained that he's a guy that ate the Nidhog fruit in the past. He's not literally fighting against a sun god. He's fighting against a Nika fruit user. We're not looking at some ancient god here. We're just looking at the version of Loki from the past fighting the Luffy from the past. Eric, god damn it, man. I do agree. I think it is very possible that Kuzan is working with Shanks. That's literally what I just jotted down. Reason being that Shanks seems to have just gotten some information from somebody, aka a spy. If Kuzan really wanted to work with a pirate, it wouldn't make sense that he would gravitate towards Blackbeard. Shanks would be the morally correct option out of the existing Yonko at the time, you know? So I do think that is a strong possibility. I'm not going to talk about that any further, but I do generally agree with you. That is what I thought. I was hoping to save it, but yeah. Joyboy SGLS, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 22 months. Yo, Morge, can we get a Kagurubachi update? I have not read it this week. This week I've worked pretty late every night on different things. So, like, when it's late at night and I'm tired, I don't feel like reading. But I'll definitely read this weekend. I'll probably finish it out this week, like catch up this weekend. Maybe next chapter, Chopper will ask the squirrel if Nika had a black blade or not. Now we're going in circles because you're trying to argue that these are literal gods. You can wait for Sunday's video. I explain in detail why, like, this warrior god is not literally a god. If he is a god, how did he die? Everything about the chapter indicates that it's a dude that ate the Nidhog fruit. Because that's how they fucking know that if an ancient giant eats the fruit, then they scale to that size. This is just an ancient giant from the past, dude. This is just the Loki from the previous era. Yeah, no Kagurubachi spoilers. Yeah. All right. I think we're probably covered everything here. I mean, all Norse gods died too. So this warrior god was also a devil fruit user. So, like, a literal god ate a devil fruit. This god died, and then the fruit got passed on. But somehow the giants just know the way the fruit works, which is that it's based on size scaling. How would they know this if the, like, what do you guys just piece out? There's been nobody's eaten the fruit since that God of War, right? Nobody's eaten the fruit since that God of War. Okay? And you guys are saying the God of War is literally a god. He's not just some ancient giant. He's literally a god from the past era. So this god had to eat a devil fruit to become so powerful or whatever. And he dies. And nobody eats this fruit since he dies. But the giants also just magically know that even though nobody's eaten this fruit since that god died, the fruit just scales with size, with how big the person is, how big the user is. So, like, if a human eats it, it gets this big. If a giant eats it, it gets this big. If an ancient giant eats it, it gets this big, right? Is that your guys' argument? That, like, were there past users that were like humans and giants and ancient giants, and then one day, like, a literal god just showed up and ate the fruit? Does that make sense? And then the god still dies? And then after the god dies, then nobody eats the fruit since then? Just think this through, and also just keep in mind one other simple fact, which is that in One Piece so far, there are no gods. Gods are not real. There are only people who eat the god fruits. So you see why what you guys are arguing is, like, a little bit based on nothing. Okay, now I'm going in circles with this conversation and getting slightly annoyed. I feel like this is hard cope because people don't want to acknowledge that there was a sun god fruit user in the past who did not have a black blade. That's all I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. All right. Who was most certainly a swordsman. If gods ain't real, how do you explain Anno? That is a good point. That is a good point. All right, guys, we are probably going to wrap stream here. Thank you all for tuning in. Yeah, I'm really excited for the next chapter to see more of what Loki can do. And, yeah, just watch out for Sunday's video. So tomorrow will be chapter review, and then Sunday will be, yeah, then Sunday will be the, Sunday will be the main video. And that video actually goes into the God of War. All right.